think they close though. Like, it got so bad, I had to go back to watch Oregon, right? Just to make sure I wasn't tripping. I watched Oregon and I watched Shador. Nobody can tell me that he's better than Shador. You can't tell me
No,
that.
not at Shador's best.
You cannot tell me that.
Shador's best.
You can't tell me that.
No.
I watched enough tape and I watched enough football and I know enough to see. When I watch these two dudes, I'll probably watch over 20 games just to make sure I wasn't tripping. There's no way nobody that watched both of their films would say he's better than Shador.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Before we even get started, if you're as frustrated as I am and want real, unfiltered analysis on what's happening, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get this community to 1,000 strong, and your click is the only way we get there. It's free, and it helps a ton. Alright, let's get into it, because what we are watching in Cleveland, it's not just bad, it's a full-blown organizational meltdown. The Cleveland Browns organization is imploding from the inside out, and what we're witnessing might be the most spectacular coaching disaster of the entire NFL season. Behind closed doors in that Cleveland locker room, tensions have reportedly reached a breaking point between head coach Kevin Stefanski and his struggling young quarterback Dillon Gabriel, and the aftermath of their brutal loss to the New England Patriots has exposed cracks in the foundation that can no longer be ignored or papered over with corporate speak and hollow promises. This isn't just another loss for a struggling franchise. This is a full-blown organizational crisis that threatens to consume everyone involved. From the head coach whose job security hangs by the thinnest of threads, to the young quarterback who looks completely overwhelmed by the magnitude of professional football, to the franchise quarterback prospect sitting on the bench, watching this train wreck unfold while wondering if he'll ever get his opportunity to prove what he can do. The Dillon Gabriel experiment that Kevin Stefanski has stubbornly defended for weeks. The plan he's clung to despite mounting evidence that it's failing spectacularly needs to be over immediately. And that's not reactionary hot take material designed to generate clicks or stir up controversy for the sake of controversy. That's cold hard reality based on what we witnessed during that absolutely embarrassing performance against New England. Based on the revealing press conference that followed, where even Stefanski couldn't muster a convincing defense of his quarterback, and based on the brutal honesty that finally started seeping through the corporate veneer when the head coach admitted that everything, and he emphasized everything, needs to be examined during this perfectly timed bye week. After watching Dillon Gabriel play what might legitimately be one of the worst quarterback performances of the entire 2025 NFL season, after seeing a young man who looked completely lost on a professional football field making reads that high school quarterbacks would be embarrassed by, after witnessing interceptions so egregiously bad that you had to question whether he understands basic quarterback fundamentals. The evidence has become overwhelming and undeniable. This situation has reached a critical breaking point, and the walls are closing in on everyone involved in this disaster. If you didn't subject yourself to watching this football game against the New England Patriots, you might have actually missed one of the most cringe-inducing quarterback performances of the entire NFL season. Dillon Gabriel didn't just play poorly, or have an off day, or struggle with accuracy issues that could be corrected with minor adjustments. He played horrendously, and that word doesn't even come close to doing justice to how absolutely terrible he looked out there on that field wearing a Cleveland Browns uniform. This young man looked like someone who shouldn't even be playing professional football based on the sheer volume of reads he missed, the absolutely baffling decisions he made in critical moments, the throws he attempted that defied all logic and football sense. We're talking about a quarterback who was practically throwing the ball directly to linebackers like he was intentionally trying to gift the Patriots interceptions. We're talking about overthrowing wide receivers by 5 full yards on routine passes that NFL quarterbacks complete in their sleep. We're talking about consistently missing open receivers, holding the ball far too long in the pocket until pressure arrived, and making rookie mistakes that even actual rookies fresh out of college shouldn't be making at this level. The film doesn't lie. No matter how much Kevin Stefanski might want to spin the narrative or deflect responsibility or hide behind team first platitudes, the statistics paint a devastating picture that can't be explained away. The scoreboard reflects the brutal reality of what happened on that field. And after watching Stefanski's uncomfortable press conference where he looked like a man who knows his professional future is in serious jeopardy, even the head coach himself can't keep defending the indefensible any longer. Let's really dig into this, because just saying he was bad doesn't capture the scale of this failure. Let's talk about the first interception. It's 3rd and medium. The Patriots aren't doing anything exotic. They're showing a basic cover 3 look, maybe a cover 2 shell. The linebacker, let's say it's Jawan Bentley. He's just sitting in his zone. He's not even doing anything special. He's just reading Gabriel's eyes. And Dillon Gabriel stares down his intended receiver from the second the ball is snapped. There is no head movement. There is no progression. There is no looking off the safety. He just locks in, pat, 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 and throws the ball. Bentley doesn't even have to make an athletic play. He literally just stands there and catches the football as if Gabriel was his quarterback in a practice drill. I've seen high school quarterbacks with better eye discipline. That is not an NFL level mistake. That is a you don't understand the fundamentals of the position mistake. How does that happen? How does a coaching staff, Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach, how do they put a player on the field who is that fundamentally broken? That's not a bad throw. That is a catastrophic failure of processing. But okay, one bad play. Let's look at the second interception. This one might have been even worse. They're trying to push the ball downfield. Finally, it's a go route. The receiver, let's say it's Jerry Jeudy. He actually gets a step. He's got a step on the corner. This is the throw. This is the one you have to hit. All Gabriel has to do is lay it out there, give his guy a chance to make a play. And what does he do? He overthrows him. Not by a little, not by a yard or two where you say, just missed him. He overthrows him by 5 full yards. The safety, who was playing in the middle of the field, had time to read the throw, run over, and catch it like a punt. There wasn't even a Browns receiver in the zip code. That is a physical limitation. That is an accuracy problem that you don't just coach out in the middle of a season. You either have that throw or you don't. And Dillon Gabriel unequivocally does not have that throw. And it wasn't just the interceptions, it was every play. It was the simple 5-yard out routes that he'd skip at the receiver's feet. It was the checkdowns he'd take on 3rd and 10 when a receiver was breaking open 12 yards downfield. It was his pocket presence. The man looks like he's seeing ghosts. The offensive line actually gave him time on several plays, and he was bailing from clean pockets. He was drifting backwards instead of stepping up into his throws, which is why half his passes were floating and dying. He's not feeling the rush. He's imagining the rush. He's pre-panicked. The game is moving at 100 miles per hour, and he is processing it at maybe 10. You cannot win football games like this. You cannot function as an offense like this. And Kevin Stefanski has watched this week after week. It hasn't been getting better. It's been getting worse. The Patriots' loss wasn't an anomaly. It was the culmination of weeks of ineptitude. It was the moment the experiment definitively and spectacularly exploded. Kevin Stefanski, the man who has stubbornly defended Dillon Gabriel week after week, despite mounting evidence that the young quarterback isn't ready for this level of competition. The coach who has refused to even seriously consider giving Shedeur Sanders a legitimate opportunity to prove what he can do has finally been completely exposed. This whole little experiment he's been running with Gabriel as the unquestioned starter needs to be over with immediately right now today, because there's simply no justification for continuing down this failing path any longer. The coach who was once considered one of the bright young offensive minds in the NFL, the guy who won Coach of the Year honors and was supposed to be the answer to Cleveland's decades of dysfunction, now looks like someone who might not even make it to the 2026 season. The pressure is mounting from every direction. The fans are openly calling for changes. The media is asking increasingly pointed questions that Stefanski struggles to answer convincingly, and most tellingly, his own comments and body language suggest he knows that dramatic adjustments need to happen immediately, or his tenure in Cleveland will come to an unceremonious and embarrassing end. This game against New England was ugly on every conceivable level, and that's actually understating how bad it truly was. The final score showed 32-13, but honestly, that doesn't even capture how thoroughly dominated Cleveland was from the opening kickoff to the final whistle. The Patriots absolutely controlled this game from start to finish, dictating the pace, moving the ball efficiently, and making Cleveland look completely overmatched despite the Browns having arguably superior defensive talent on paper. Dillon Gabriel's statistical line tells the entire painful story in numbers that can't be argued with or spun positively. He completed 21 passes on 35 attempts, which translates to a completion percentage that's simply unacceptable for a starting NFL quarterback. He managed only 156 total passing yards in an entire game of professional football, which is absolutely pathetic production that wouldn't be acceptable from a backup, let alone a starter. He did throw 2 touchdown passes, but both came during garbage time when the game was already decided and the Patriots were playing soft prevent defense, so they are essentially meaningless statistics that don't reflect actual competitive success. And most damningly, he threw those 2 interceptions that were both absolutely horrendous decisions that killed any momentum Cleveland tried to build and gave New England short fields to work with. But those interceptions weren't just unfortunate breaks or great defensive plays that you tip your cap to and move on from. We just broke them down. These were throws that made you genuinely question whether Dillon Gabriel understands fundamental quarterback concepts like reading defenses, anticipating routes, and throwing receivers open. One interception was literally thrown directly to a linebacker who was standing right in Gabriel's line of sight and didn't even have to move or make a particularly athletic play to intercept it. The linebacker just stood there and caught the ball like Gabriel was his quarterback throwing him a pass in practice. The other interception was so poorly placed and so badly thrown that the defensive back had significantly more time and space to catch it cleanly than any Browns receiver would have had if they'd somehow managed to get their hands on it first. These are the kinds of mistakes that get quarterbacks benched in high school programs, let alone college football, let alone the highest level of professional football in the world. These aren't growing pains or developmental struggles that you work through patiently while a young quarterback learns the speed of the NFL game. These are fundamental failures of processing, decision-making, and execution that suggest someone who simply isn't ready for this moment and might never be ready for it no matter how much patience and development time you invest in him. Meanwhile, on the opposite sideline, Drake Maye was absolutely balling out for New England and showing everyone watching exactly what competent quarterback play looks like when executed by someone who actually belongs on an NFL field as a starter. Maye went 18 for 24, which translates to a 75% completion rate that Dillon Gabriel can only dream about achieving on his best day with perfect conditions. Maye threw for 200 yards, significantly outproducing Gabriel despite playing in the same game under the same weather conditions against comparable levels of competition. He threw 3 touchdown passes compared to Gabriel's 2 meaningless garbage time scores. And even though Maye did throw 1 interception, his overall performance was night and day better than what Cleveland got from their quarterback position. Drake Maye looked poised and confident in the pocket, comfortable reading defenses and going through his progressions, accurate with his ball placement on throws, both short and deep, and completely in control of the Patriots' offense from the first snap to the last. Dillon Gabriel looked lost and confused, panicked when pressure arrived even when he had time to throw, wildly inaccurate on routine passes that NFL quarterbacks complete automatically, and completely overwhelmed by the speed and complexity of professional football. The contrast between the 2 young quarterbacks playing in the same game couldn't have been more stark or more damning for Cleveland's current situation. Where Gabriel saw ghosts in a clean pocket, Maye stepped up and delivered a strike. Where Gabriel stared down his first read, Maye was clearly seen moving his head, going from his first to his second to his third option before hitting his check down. Where Gabriel threw a floater 5 yards over his receiver's head, Maye was putting the ball on the numbers, hitting his receivers in stride so they could get yards after the catch. It was a clinic. It was a side-by-side comparison of a potential franchise quarterback and a guy who looks like he might not even be a capable backup. And that's the guy Kevin Stefanski has hitched his wagon to. That's the guy he has defended. That's the guy he has started every single week while a high-round draft pick sits on the bench. In all facets of the game, from offensive execution to time of possession to red zone efficiency, Cleveland was thoroughly outplayed, comprehensively outcoached, and completely outclassed. This wasn't a competitive game that came down to a few plays or bounces. This was a thorough dismantling of a team that's supposed to be competing for playoff spots, not getting blown out by double digits at home against a Patriots team. That's good, but not great. Now, before we continue dissecting this disaster, we absolutely have to give massive credit where it's genuinely due. Myles Garrett had a career-defining performance that will be remembered for years, recording 5 sacks in a single game, which represents absolutely video game numbers that seem almost impossible to achieve against professional competition. Think about that statistic for just a moment and let it sink in. One single defensive player recorded 5 sacks in one game. That's the kind of dominant, generational, once-in-a-career performance that happens maybe once or twice in even the greatest players' entire professional careers. Garrett was an absolute monster monster out there, completely unblockable no matter what scheme New England tried, terrorizing the Patriots' offensive line on every snap and doing absolutely everything humanly possible to single-handedly give his team a chance to win. Despite the offensive dysfunction happening on the other side of the ball, he played with passion, intensity, technique, and motor that were all absolutely elite level, but it still wasn't nearly enough. And that's the tragedy. That's the organizational sin. 5 sacks. And you lose 32-13. You lose by 19 points. How is that even mathematically possible? It's possible when your offense is so inept, so catastrophically bad, that it renders a Hall of Fame performance completely and utterly meaningless. What do you think that does to the morale of the defense? What do you think Myles Garrett is thinking in that locker room? He's sitting there, gassed, beat up, having left every single ounce of himself on that field, just to watch his offense go 3 and out in 45 seconds and send him right back out there. He sacks the quarterback, forces a punt. The offense gets the ball, and Dillon Gabriel throws an interception directly to a linebacker. He sacks the quarterback again, forces a fumble. The offense gets the ball in good field position and immediately goes 3 and out after 2 incomplete passes and a 1-yard run. You are wasting the prime of a generational, all-world talent. You are telling your entire defense that their best, their most historic efforts are not good enough to overcome the incompetence you are willfully trotting out at the quarterback position. That is how you lose a locker room. That is how a coach loses his job. When your defensive star has a historic 5-sack performance and you still lose by 19 points. When your defense creates multiple opportunities and you still can't score meaningful points. When one side of the ball is playing championship caliber football and you're still getting blown out. That tells you everything you need to know about where the problems actually lie. This loss wasn't on Myles Garrett or the defensive unit. This loss falls squarely on the shoulders of the offense, the quarterback play, and the coaching decisions that continue to trot out the same failing formula week after week, expecting different results. At this point, after everything we've witnessed over these first 8 games of the season, the Browns absolutely have to play Shedeur Sanders. They have to give him a legitimate opportunity to compete for the starting job. There are no more ifs, no more ands, no more buts, no more excuses or justifications for continuing to stick with Dillon Gabriel as the unquestioned starter. You've seen more than enough of Gabriel to know conclusively that he's not the answer at quarterback. You've wasted enough games stubbornly sticking with a plan that clearly isn't working and shows no signs of improving. The sample size is large enough now to make definitive judgments. It's time to see what Shedeur Sanders can do with real first-team reps, with the starting offensive line protecting him with the game plan designed around his specific skill set and strengths. It's time to find out whether the quarterback prospect you invested in actually has the talent and mental makeup to be the franchise guy you need him to be. What is the argument against it at this point? What is Kevin Stefanski afraid of? Is he afraid Shedeur Sanders will play worse than Dillon Gabriel? Is that possible? Is he afraid Shedeur is going to throw more than 2 interceptions that are aimed directly at linebackers? Is he afraid Shedeur is going to produce less than 156 yards of total offense? I'm not sure that's humanly possible. The floor is the basement. You are already at rock bottom. The he's not ready argument is dead. Ready for what? He's not ready to be as bad as the guy who's already out there? The it'll ruin his confidence argument is a joke. You know what ruins a rookie's confidence? Sitting him on the bench and telling him, see that guy out there? The one who just threw it to the other team for the 5th time. The one who can't complete a pass. He's still a better option than you. That's what destroys confidence. You have a perfectly timed bye week. It's a gift from the football gods. You have 2 full weeks to get Shedeur Sanders all the first-team reps in practice. You have 2 weeks to install a game plan that is tailored to his strengths, his accuracy, his mobility, his poise, his ability to make plays off script, which is something Gabriel clearly cannot do. You have 2 weeks to rally the team around a change, to give them a spark of hope, to show them that you are not insane, that you are not just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. This is the moment. This is the pivot point for the entire season and for Kevin Stefanski's career. And if Kevin Stefanski refuses to make that change, if he continues to stubbornly stick with Gabriel despite all the evidence suggesting it's time to try something different, then maybe it's time for the front office to seriously consider whether they need new coaching leadership entirely. Because at that point, it's not about football anymore. It's about ego. It's about a coach being unwilling to admit he was wrong, even when that admission is the only thing that can save his team and his job. After this embarrassing and thoroughly demoralizing loss to New England, Kevin Stefanski stood at the podium for his mandatory post-game press conference, and this was genuinely uncomfortable television to watch. The man looked absolutely defeated, like someone who knows with certainty that his job is hanging by the thinnest possible thread, and there's absolutely nothing he can say at this point to save himself from the consequences of these results. His body language spoke volumes before he even opened his mouth. His shoulders were slumped. He avoided making direct eye contact with the reporters asking questions. His voice had that flat, defeated tone that coaches use when they know they're running out of time, running out of answers, and running out of excuses. He started his opening statement by saying, and these are his exact words, "We just didn't do anything good enough today. Frustrated, but we'll win as a team. We'll lose as a team, and we'll look at everything on this bye week and figure out a way to get this thing going with more than half our season left. So that's what we're going to use this bye to really look at everything we're doing, because the results have to be better." Often cyclic, that opening statement tells you absolutely everything you need to know about where Stefanski's head is at right now and how much pressure he's feeling from every direction. When a head coach starts talking about looking at everything, examining every position, using the bye week to figure things out and make wholesale changes, that's coach speak for I have absolutely no idea what to do at this point, and I'm desperately scrambling for solutions before it's too late. That's not confidence. That's not a coach who believes he has the right plan and just needs time for it to come together. That's someone who knows he's failing and is hoping that admitting it publicly might buy him a little more time to fix things before he's fired. Looking at everything is the last refuge of a coach who is out of answers. What does everything mean, Kevin? Does it mean you're going to reevaluate the punter, the long snapper, the catering service at the facility? Or does everything mean the one position that is single-handedly sinking this billion-dollar franchise? Stop hiding behind these vague generalities. One reporter asked Stefanski to clarify what exactly he means when he says he's going to look at everything, and his response was incredibly revealing if you read between the corporate speak. He said, when you lose like this, you have to look at everything, every position, everything I'm doing. It's frustrating for where we are as a team. Every position you have to look at. But let me say that with a young quarterback, you understand there's going to be ups and downs. Stop right there and analyze what Stefanski just said in that response. He's already making excuses for Dillon Gabriel before anyone even asked about him specifically. He's preemptively defending the quarterback by saying young quarterbacks naturally experience ups and downs, which is his way of asking for patience and understanding and more time, despite the mounting evidence that patience isn't fixing the fundamental problems. But here's the critical problem with that excuse and that framing. Gabriel is not showing ups and downs like Stefanski wants everyone to believe. He's showing only downs. There's no progress or improvement that you can point to. There are no flashes of brilliance mixed in with the mistakes that make you believe he'll figure it out eventually. It's just consistent mediocrity and repeated errors week after week after week. Show me the ups, Kevin. Show me the tape. I've got the all 22 pulled up. I can't find them. I see a quarterback who is regressing, who is losing confidence, and who is taking the entire offense down with him. Then a reporter asked an absolutely devastating question that cut right to the heart of the matter and put Stefanski on the defensive. The reporter asked, "Do you feel like this wide receiver core is good enough for you to get an accurate evaluation of whoever plays quarterback?" That question is brilliant in its construction because it's essentially asking whether the supporting cast is so bad that you can't fairly judge the quarterback's performance. But it's also subtly implying that maybe you should try a different quarterback to see if the results change with the same supporting cast. Stefanski's response was interesting and worth examining carefully. He said, "Yeah, I need to do a better job. Obviously, Jerry needs to get the football, but we have to do a better job." Notice how Stefanski immediately took personal responsibility there, which is admirable on the surface and shows some accountability, but also notice very carefully what he didn't say. He didn't defend Gabriel's performance or execution. He didn't make excuses about the receivers not getting open or running poor routes. He basically admitted that the offense as a whole, including his own play calling and Gabriel's execution of those plays, needs to be dramatically better than what they've shown. When a coach starts repeatedly saying, "I need to do a better job," over and over in a press conference, that's someone who knows his seat is burning white hot, and he's trying to deflect some of the criticism and heat from his players onto himself because he understands understands that ultimately the responsibility falls on coaching. That's someone who's hearing footsteps and knows that ownership is watching every word, that the front office is keeping detailed notes, and that his job security depends on things turning around immediately. Another reporter pushed even harder with a follow-up question that you could tell made Stefanski visibly uncomfortable. The reporter asked, "When you say look at every position, are you doing enough with the quarterback position? Do you need to do a better job?" That is as close as a professional reporter can get to directly asking, are you going to bench Dillon Gabriel and play Sanders, without actually saying those exact words and creating an inflammatory soundbite. Stefanski paused for a long moment, clearly uncomfortable with the directness of the question, and then said simply, "I think I know the answer is yes." Let that response sink in for a moment and consider what he's actually admitting there. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns, when asked directly if he needs to do a better job with the quarterback position, specifically essentially admitted that yes, changes need to happen at that position. He didn't say, "Dillon is our guy and we're sticking with him no matter what." He didn't say, "I have complete confidence in our current quarterback situation." He said, "I know the answer is yes to needing to do better at that position." That's about as close as a coach can possibly come to admitting his quarterback isn't cutting it without explicitly saying those exact words in a press conference and completely destroying whatever confidence that quarterback has left. That's someone who knows changes need to happen, but is still hesitant to fully commit to making them publicly because of the implications and fallout. That hesitation and that careful political answer tells you that Stefanski is seriously considering making a quarterback change, but hasn't fully committed to it yet publicly. When asked specifically about Dillon Gabriel's individual performance in this game, Stefanski immediately fell back on the classic "we win as a team, lose as a team" response that coaches use when they can't or won't defend an individual player's performance. He said, "It's a team game. We'll win as a team, lose as a team. Credit to them, they did a good job. We have to find a way to stay on the football field, stay out of third down. If we are in third down, we have to convert." Again, notice very carefully what's missing from that answer. There's no specific defense of Gabriel. There's no "Dillon made some really good throws," or "he's progressing nicely," or "I saw improvement in certain areas," or any positive spin whatsoever on the quarterback's performance. Stefanski is hiding behind generic team speak because he knows he can't defend the individual performance of his quarterback, so he's deflecting to talking about the team as a whole instead. But we all watched the game. We know it wasn't a team loss. Myles Garrett didn't lose that game. The defense didn't lose that game. Dillon Gabriel and the offensive coaching staff lost that game, period.